And so I hope that somebody who reads this book or listens to this podcast feels encouraged that that actually is what you're supposed to do. That's how it's supposed to work. All of us are supposed to contribute, not just 5 of us, not just people with 1 million followers, not just the president.
I'm Jenna Kutcher, your host of the Goal Digger podcast. I escaped the corporate world at the age of 23 with nothing more than a $300 camera from Craigslist and a dream. Now I'm running a 7-figure online business that feels even better than it looks, all from my house in small town Minnesota with my family. Here, we value time as our currency. We mix the woo and the work, and we are in the pursuit of building businesses that give us the freedom to live lives that we love. I've always loved turning big goals into reality, and I'm here to help you do the same. This isn't just a peek behind the curtain. Come along with me and my guests as we tear the whole curtain down. Every week, we tackle practical, no-fluff marketing strategies and host honest discussions on what works and what doesn't. Join me and my expert guests for actionable insights to help you grow your dream business with confidence. Pull up a seat and get ready to be challenged, inspired, and empowered. This is the Goal Digger podcast. Have you ever wondered how much impact one person can really have on the world or in their business? My guest today, Sharon McMahon, is here to remind us that even the smallest among us can be mighty. Sharon, known to over 1 million as America's government teacher on Instagram, has built a community that thrives on fact-based, nonpartisan information in an era of confusion and division. But her impact doesn't just stop there. She has also raised millions for causes that matter. She also hosts the award-winning podcast, Here's Where It Gets Interesting, and is the author of the Substack newsletter, The Preamble. In her brand new book, The Small and the Mighty, 12 Unsung Americans Who Changed the Course of History, Sharon tells the stories of everyday individuals who have shaped the future of this country, proving that you don't need traditional power or fame to make a difference. Sharon also happens to be my neighbor. We share the same city, and so we often get to connect about the work that we're doing. And I'm so excited to have her on this show because we're talking about the lessons from these unsung heroes and also how they apply to entrepreneurship for all of us. From making hope a daily choice to the power of starting small, we are talking about the influence that you already have and how to harness it for both your business and for the world around you. So if you've ever felt like your actions are just too small to matter, or you're looking for ways to lead with intention and purpose, this is the episode for you. Sharon, my neighbor, my friend, welcome to the Goal Digger podcast. When all your marketing team does is put out fires, well, they burn out, and they burn out fast. Can you relate? Sifting through leads, creating content for infinite channels, endlessly searching for performance KPIs, it all takes a toll on our productivity and our mental health. But with HubSpot, you can stop burnout in its tracks. Plus, your team can achieve their best results without ever breaking a sweat. With HubSpot's collection of AI tools, Breeze, you can pinpoint the best leads possible, capture prospects' attention with click-worthy content, and access all your company's data in one place. No sifting through multiple tabs necessary. It is all waiting for your team in HubSpot. Keep your marketers cool and make your campaign results hotter than ever. Visit HubSpot.com/marketers to learn more. That's HubSpot.com/marketers. Okay, I am with my neighbor. So I was just in Sundance, Utah, and I was at a conference of quilters. It was as magnificent as it sounds. And one girl raised her hand and she said, I have 2 important questions. Do you know Sharon is the first question. And it was so precious. And then she's like, everyone who's a governor in the room, raise your hand. Aww. And those are your people. And I was amongst them. And I want to kick this off, Sharon, because I am just so excited to have this conversation with you today. Is you have been going all over the world lately with your book tour, which we'll talk about in just a bit. I'm sure you've been asked basically every question under the book. What is one question you haven't been asked yet that you wish someone would ask you?
Well, nobody's asking, how are you really, Jenna?
Ooh. That's a great one. I thought we were going to talk about dry shampoo because we were just doing that.
We were. But we both have dirty hair today.
How are you really? Because this is a crazy time and we'll talk about why it's so crazy for you. But how are you really?
Well, thanks for asking. Thanks for asking, Jenna. I'm good. It's like a really, really challenging. It's challenging to describe how one feels in this moment when you see sort of the culmination of 3 years. That's how long it's taken me to write and launch this book. When you see the culmination of 3 years of hard work, literally being born into the world, there's a sense of, just unmatched pride that you cannot predict how you'll feel until you get to that moment. There's also the sense of feeling pulled in a million directions, and that can be it's very challenging, if you were just able to just sit at home and be like, yay, I did it, 2 thumbs up. That's very different than feeling like I have 4 kids and I have this business and I have employees and I'm on a book tour. And so it's feeling both, extremely excited and grateful for this incredible opportunity, but also the pizza dough is getting pulled real thin right now.
Yes. What's crazy, Sharon, is I remember, because my book came out now 2 years ago.
Yes.
We were literally talking about your book
2 years ago.
So
I know.
When you think of how much time it takes, and it's so funny because you and I are so similar. And I was like, I will never write a book. It takes way too long. You don't make any money. It takes so much time. And then you get this vision and this message that is so much bigger than money and time, and you do it. But it's this vulnerable, beautiful undertaking. It pauses every other aspect of your life, whether you want it to or not. And so it's been crazy. What has the process been like for you? Because your book is very different from my book. So tell us a little bit about that and what the process of writing it was, because it did take a long time.
Yeah, there's so much research involved in writing a history book, right? It has to have a compelling narrative, but it also has to be true. And so that's part of what makes it a very challenging genre to be successful in, and a challenging genre to do well, is that you have to be able to prove all of your claims, but yet it has to be really, really interesting to read about. So the research aspect of it has been very labor intensive, very time intensive. There's been a lot of shakeups at my imprint at Penguin Random House, where, editors have left the company, come back to the company, gone on maternity leave. They hired somebody else. I've been through 3 different editors just from, internal shakeups. So it's been a bit of a tumultuous process. It also, the release of the book got pushed back by 6 months because of all of these sort of internal shakeups at the publisher. Fortunately, that's all been ironed out now. But the research aspect of it cannot be I can't, overstate how integral that is. Because if you don't have a good story that you can prove, then you have nothing in this genre. And really figuring out how much of myself to include in the book versus how much of it is just straight information. That's also was sort of a finessing process, because people ultimately, when people pick up your book, your initial audience, your sort of first wave audience, is people who are already familiar with you, right? They're people who are already in your community, who want to support you. They want to read what you have to say. And then what the hope is that your sort of second wave audience are, people who have been experiencing the brand evangelism of your first wave audience. Maybe people who don't know you as well. Maybe they've heard your name, but they don't really consume much of your content. So they don't know that much about you. And then, of course, you hope that the title has legs beyond these sort of 2 tiers of audience, but figuring out how much of yourself to put in so that the people who are in your first wave audience appreciate it and recognize you. And they're like, I loved Jenna's book or Sharon's book, but not so much that people who aren't currently familiar with you are turned off because they don't already know anything about you. If it's just oh my gosh, remember that one time, inside joke, you've lost your sort of second tier audience. Right. So that's I think a finessing process that a lot of authors who have existing platforms have to figure out for themselves. And there's not one specific answer, but you did a great job of finding the right mix of yourself and information that's widely applicable to people, even if they don't know you.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny. I was getting ready today and just thinking of you, and I have known about you forever. You and I have so many similarities in our stories.
We have many friends in common.
Yes, many friends in common, specifically when you were a photographer, because we were photographers around the same time.
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit of your story, because there are pivots, there are shifts, there are new identities becoming and happening. So tell me a little bit about like the journey.
Yeah. My mom is somebody who's always like, what will Sharon do next? Nobody knows.
Same. I don't even know, right?
Yeah, that's right. Same. My husband is like, I have learned that whatever your harebrained idea is, no matter how many alarm bells are going off in my mind, I should just go with it.
Yes.
Because your instincts are the right instincts. I bet Drew is the same way too, where he's like, whatever Jenna thinks is what we're going to do.
We're going to go.
Yes. So I, started out my adult life as a high school teacher and spent a lot of years doing that. I taught in multiple states. I worked in really challenging teaching situations, and I loved being a teacher. Teaching is something that is very natural to me. I'm the oldest sister. I'm somebody who is like, naturally inclined towards, sharing information. Many funny stories between me and my siblings where it's like, oh no, she has devised a curriculum about wilderness first aid and she's only 8. That's just my innate tendency. So being a teacher was a very makes complete sense. That's exactly what you should be doing. So, when I left the high school classroom, I did it because I wanted to move back to Minnesota, back to our sort of shared hometown, because I wanted to be close to my family. Yeah. And I knew that leaving the classroom and moving my side hustle business that I had spent years building that I was going to then start doing full time when I moved back to Minnesota, I knew that leaving the classroom meant that I was probably stepping away for at least quite a while. I had too much education and experience to get hired in northern Minnesota, where budgets are very tight. It's a very different teaching environment than teaching in the wealthy suburbs of Washington, D.C. And that was a choice that I made, not because I disliked teaching, because I never disliked teaching, but my desire to be close to my family outweighed my need to be in the classroom in that moment. So moved my business and some of my employees from Washington, D.C. back to my hometown, built out a building and ran that business, eventually outgrew that space.
And this business was the yarn, right?
This is my yarn business. Yes. Okay. Yes. I owned one of the largest hand dyeing studios in the world. Eventually is what it became. And it's a very niche business that if you're not in the fiber industry, you probably would not know anything about it. But hand dyeing yarn is it's like a collector's item to a lot of people, kind of like you were talking about with the quilting. Quilting is like a very unique subculture.
Yep.
Very dedicated. People who are into it are extremely dedicated to it. They would know all the big names in quilting.
Yes.
Whereas if you're not into quilting, you wouldn't know who, I don't know who that person is, but it really means something to the people in that community, right? And quilters and knitters are often, they're built of the same stock. And there's a lot of crossover in that, a lot of times people do both.
Yeah.
So that was really when I started understanding what it means to build a community online. Because a huge portion of my success in the fiber industry was built via my online interactions with people, online message boards and my website and my blog and all those kinds of things. Eventually, one of the things that I discovered that I was good at was taking pictures of my products. And I started getting requests from yarn shops all over the country. Would you come down here and teach a workshop on X? Would you come down here and teach a workshop on Y? And one of the things they wanted me to teach workshops on was how to take pictures of your sweater. If you're going to spend 3 months making something, you want to have a picture to show that shows how much. It's like people want to take pictures of their sourdough bread.
Yes.
They want to take pictures of the things that they're in my garden. We have a shared love of gardening. You want to document.
Tomatoes are beautiful, right?
Yes.
I'm like, I never imagined a stage of life where I am taking portrait mode photos of vegetables.
Look at my dahlia. Portrait mode. Wow. Look at that. Look at it. It's so amazing. I'm fully embracing the I am a woman with a visor who takes pictures of her garden.
Sun damage here. That's right.
Fully what I'm up to. So all that to say, I started working I sold my yarn company and I started working exclusively as a photographer. And I did that for almost 9 years. Anybody who's listening to this who is a photographer, and I know you have quite a few photographers in your community, I was shooting over 400 sessions a year. That is how busy I was at it.
Just got goosebumps. I mean, like not the good kind of goosebumps.
Oh my gosh,
Dread
you're working
goosebumps.
18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes. 400 sessions a year. Some of them are weddings where you're literally out of pocket all day long.
Yeah.
Very, very, very busy. Is successful, but like that's an excessive amount of busyness. And all of that changed for many people, including myself, during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And my husband was diagnosed with stage 5 renal failure. And the pandemic, of course, saw a lot of business changes wherever you were. And I had an actual photography studio where, of course, people don't want to come and get their picture taken with a mask on. Like, of course they don't. Right. That's silly. But also, because of my husband's serious illness, and there were no treatments, no vaccines, like none of that kind of stuff available yet, people with stage 5 renal failure had a 30% chance of death if they got COVID early on in the pandemic. Those are odds that most people would not take, right? Yeah. If I said you have a 1 in 3 chance almost of dying in a car accident if you leave your driveway today, you would probably stay home. Those odds are not super favorable. So it also meant that because of his illness, I couldn't just sort of like skirt the rules of like, oh, we're here alone, even though you're supposed to wear masks in businesses. I couldn't just like kind of like, no one will know, it's okay, because I could not risk getting him sick. Yeah. So he got a kidney transplant in August of 2020, which, also I'll spare you all the gory details of, but suffice it to say, it was a very, very lonely time for us. Yeah. We were very isolated. And I suddenly had sort of been, given this, in many ways, I look at it as a gift, this gift of time that I would have never taken for myself because I was too busy hustling with all my business. I had too many sessions to shoot. I had too many things to do. Suddenly, I was forced to take copious amounts of time off, like many people were. And I had the ability to sort of look around and think, what should I do with all of my time? We're stuck at home all day long. And fortunately, we live in a really beautiful area with tons of green space and the ability to be outside. And so I know you spent a lot of time up at the North Shore of Lake Superior. So that did help, that it was not just like we live in this 2-room apartment. We did spend a lot of time outdoors. But then the 2020 election was fast approaching, Jenna. And it does not matter who you voted for. Everybody is like, that was bananas. Let's never do that again. We don't need a repeat of that scenario ever, not one more time. Yeah. So turns out nothing is wasted. Turns out none of your previous life experiences, even if you're not doing what you set out doing, I bet like right now, you are using all of the small business knowledge that you gleaned from all of your days hustling as a wedding photographer. You are using all of that knowledge, even though you're not still out there shooting weddings, right? Right. And the same is true of me. I am currently using all of my college and all of my work experience as a government teacher in my current profession. I'm using all of my experience running multiple small businesses in my current small business. So I think it's an important point that even if it feels like a pivot is forced on you, even if it feels like, well, I'm going to have to pivot because I have no other options, often with the perspective of hindsight, you can look back and see how that pivot was actually a gift for you, how these external circumstances led you on a path that you perhaps would have never chosen. I don't know that I would have looked at this path and been like, let's go down that one. You know what I mean?
How did it start? Like, did you just start? Because I was following you and I remember, I think somebody just asked you a question, right? And then you started sharing, like, how did that happen?
Yeah, it started because I started noticing, like everybody, a lot of people who were just being real confidently wrong on the internet. People who were just, like saying things that were demonstrably false in a very authoritative tone of voice. And these are not even things that are matters of opinion, like candidate A is better than candidate B. These were things like, well, when you graduate from the electoral college, which is like, that's not a thing. The electoral college is not a place you can go. It's not a university. No,
You're not
it's not a
getting a degree.
it's not a college. There's not even an electoral college building that you can go to. It's a concept. It's not a place. Okay. It was things like that where I was like, give me a break. And I realized in that moment that I could either argue with Chads on the internet, strangers, about how they're wrong about the electoral college, or I could start making some little like fact-based, nonpartisan explainer videos about how things like the electoral college worked. And those videos started taking off. People who were already following me for my other businesses started sharing them. And eventually it started getting the attention of local news stations, radio stations, and then that just sort of expanded around the country. And then, as it turns out, the election was fractious and the months following the election were challenging. And I just kept posting about stuff I already knew from my previous experiences. And the rest, as they say, is history. It's been a very tumultuous journey, but that's the genesis. I just decided to use what I already knew and just started reusing content that was already rattling around in my brain.
When I first opened my online shop, the idea of setting it up felt so overwhelming. I had all these tools I wanted to share, but I didn't even know where to start. Then I decided to use Shopify. In less than a year, we made over $200,000 in sales. And since then, we've made multiples of that. From setting up the shop to processing payments, Shopify made everything easy and seamless. Everything just clicked. It was almost fully automated, and that allowed me to focus on creating while Shopify handled the heavy lifting. Now my shop practically runs itself. If you want to sell but you don't know where to start, you've got to use Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/goaldigger, all lowercase. Again, that's shopify.com/goaldigger to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/goaldigger. Let's talk about something we all deal with, phone bills. You know that feeling when you stumble upon something that makes you go, why wasn't I doing this sooner? Well, that's exactly how you're going to feel if you switch to Mint Mobile. They're giving you premium wireless for just $15 a month on a 3-month plan. And it's not just about the price. Mint Mobile runs on the biggest 5G network in the country, so you are getting high-speed data, unlimited talk, and text without wrecking your budget. And don't worry, you can bring your own phone and keep your number along with all your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/goaldigger. That's mintmobile.com/goaldigger. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/goaldigger. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. At what point did you realize, I'm not just sharing on the internet, this is a viable business option?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like that is the crux of what a lot of listeners listening are. They might have a hobby or a passion, or they might just be innately good at something, but they've never actually seen that tipping point of I can make a living doing this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 months into my regular posting, where I was getting lots of attention for my posting, that I decided to offer a workshop on a government topic. And I let people choose, what is it that you want to learn about? And I just offered people the opportunity to attend a Zoom workshop for $5. And my very first workshop, and I was like, and if you can't come live, I'll just send it to you later.
Yeah.
And within a few months, some of my workshops had 5,000 to 10,000 people.
I was just going to say, you maxed out Zoom.
Yes,
now you're paying thousands of dollars for Zoom.
Oh my gosh. Zoom, people have no idea how expensive Zoom is.
It's so expensive.
Expensive.
You go over the limit, it's thousands. The enterprise is insane.
It is literally it can be $2,000 to $10,000 per month.
Yeah.
To pay for Zoom at scale. Yes. Yeah. So that was really when I realized people actually, first of all, want to support you. would love to be able to support you, even if they have no intention of watching this Zoom workshop on how Congress works. They're like, they aspirationally, they think, someday I'd like to watch that. Sure. Or they think, wow, she's been giving away so much amazing content. I really would love to be able to just sort of like say thank you or pay her back for the work that she's been putting into her account. I would love to sign up for that. So that was when I realized that like I actually could make a living teaching workshops on the internet. That's weird. It wasn't something that had occurred to me at the time, but that slowly grew into like a very popular book club that I run, and I have a private Instagram account, and I still teach Zoom workshops inside that Instagram account. That became sort of the foundation of the business that I currently run that has many different, branches and arms and whatnot. But it was a few months in when I started offering Zoom workshops. And I've seen other small businesses do this too, who have really great content on the internet. I'm thinking about a flower farm that I follow where they grow all of these beautiful dahlias and things like this. And then they offer periodically Zoom workshops on how to grow dahlias in a small amount of space. And this person in particular has a farm where she sells them to wedding planners and things like that. How she grows all these flowers in like 1 acre of space. And I have actually signed up for those workshops. With any intention of becoming a commercial flower farmer? No. Yeah. I just love flowers. I just want to know. How do you do that? And I think she charged like $25 for her workshop, and I happily paid it. And then I attended the Zoom workshop live, and I think there were about 200 people in there. And I don't know how many people signed up to get the replay, but it was
such a smart way to do it though, because not only are the stakes like low, right?
Very
like especially
low.
If you think of like $5, $10, $20, like most people spend that without really blinking.
Right.
But 2, you get to also see, and I'm sure you picked this up early, you get to see what people are actually willing to pay for, because everyone's willing to consume for free or say, of course I would buy that when it comes out. But not a lot of people are willing to like put their credit card down. And so even just in seeing like, oh, wow, this one was wildly popular, let's go deeper on it. There's so much to be had. And so I love that. And I genuinely, and I don't know if you agree, but like, I believe every single person on this planet could host a Zoom workshop on something that comes so easy to them.
Yes.
That's fascinating to other people or life-changing. And it could be as simple as like organizing your spice drawer. Like it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. So I love this. I love this so much.
Yes. And it also allows you, because offering a little workshop is so like the barrier to entry is so low.
Yes.
You don't have to pay for the super expensive Zoom until you need it, right? Like you can pay for the $20 Zoom until you need the next tier. Zoom, everyone knows how to use it now. You're literally collecting people's email addresses. You're sending, setting up a very simple shopping cart. This is stuff that you literally drag and drop now. Doesn't cost much money. You don't need technical skills. And then you're sending them an email with a link to your Zoom. Yeah. And then afterwards, a follow-up email with, a replay link and like, here's the PDF of what I talked about. I love other people's jobs. This is like something that I am endlessly fascinated by. How does one get to be a marine biologist? How do you get to be the city planner?
What do you really do?
Yeah. What do you even do as the head gardener? What does that even mean? These are things that are just like very interesting to me. And I have no intention of pursuing any of those things professionally, but I still love to learn about it.
Yes.
Right. And I still want to support that person.
Yes, I saw this funny reel where it was like, here is your reminder to like host a night where everyone in your family does a PowerPoint presentation on what they actually do for work. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so funny and genius, because I'm like, there are things that like my brother does at his company in Duluth, Minnesota that I have no idea. Like when I explain it, I'm like, I know I'm butchering this. He does really awesome things. And so I'm like, I agree. It's so fascinating. And one thing I am just fascinated by is you have created like a true culture. My friend Russell Brunson will say culture, like culture. Your followers will do anything for you, and it's beautiful. And I just want to know, like, for somebody listening who has never really thought of the community aspect, because you've done this as you've pivoted, what are some tips for building such a strong community that will follow you as you pivot?
That's a great question. I love that question. The first thing is you have to be yourself. You have to be yourself, and you have to let go of this idea that, like, I'm not the right kind of self. Yeah. We think that it needs to be really carefully curated. It needs to be Kim Kardashian, and it needs to be Vogue photo shoots. And, I need to be a kind of self that is, really aspirational and elevated. That's not true. Yes, Kim Kardashian has a following, but Kim Kardashian does not have a community in the same way, say, Taylor Swift does. And Taylor Swift's community is built around her legitimate and honest personality, which is evident through her music. Yeah. In her music, she's very vulnerable. In her music, she shares her real struggles. In her music, she pokes fun at herself and other people. She has social commentary on things that she, thinks are interesting. And of course, Taylor Swift is like the ultimate scale of what it means to build a community. But she noticed the difference between, say, a Taylor Swift community and a community of some other really, really high level artists, like, let's say, like an Usher or somebody like that. People who are devoted to, who love Usher's music, maybe are not as devoted to him personally. Yeah. Because he doesn't have the same community, relatable personality aspects that Taylor Swift does, even though she's a billionaire with a private jet. People feel like they know her. Right? Yes. So allowing people to get to know you in whatever aspects you decide you want to share about is an important component of it. Because if they like you when you are talking about photography, they're going to like you when you're talking about small business, or they're going to like you when you are talking about how you spent 12 years as a government teacher. So that is something that's sort of this unique value proposition that you're bringing to the table that nobody else can bring, that nobody else is, can replicate, is what is your unique viewpoint on this topic. So you have to be yourself, and you have to let go of this idea that people will judge you for it, because they're going to judge you whether you do it or not. Yeah. Whether you play small or you have the audacity to go for it, people are going to judge you, and they might as well judge you for having the audacity to be successful.
Put on a show, baby girl. Put on a show.
They might as well judge you for having the audacity to try. Yeah. Than judge you for having never done anything with your life that they can see, obviously. But the other thing I think that is important to remember about pivoting is that everyone feels like they're building the plane while flying it. Yeah. Yeah. That is the normal way to feel. Yeah. It does not mean you're doing it wrong. If it feels like, well, I don't know, I've never done that before. Great. Keep going. That's typical. History smiles kindly on the doers, not the critics. Yeah. Right? Yes. Like, name one critic that has gone down in history. That's just those people.
Statues for the critics, right?
That's right. That's right. The people who actually just have the audacity to try are the people who are remembered for having contributed greatly to something.
Okay, wait. So this is the perfect segue into your book, because this is what the crux of your book is. And so how did that inspire that? Because I feel like your book is like, it's just so, okay, break down your book for people that haven't gotten a chance to grab it yet, because this is what I love about this conversation is you live and embody this, but you also see it in other people, which I think is the most powerful thing.
Thank you. My new book is called The Small and the Mighty, and it's about unsung Americans who changed the course of history. Some of them changed it through business. Some of them changed it through education. Some of them changed it through being civil rights workers. Some of them changed it from writing something or something really important and impactful. But everybody in this book took what they knew, where they were in time and space, with the resources available to them, and just had the audacity to try something that other people weren't doing. And it is those people who deserve to be remembered, who made very significant contributions to their country, who made very significant contributions to their community. And this is, I think it's an important lesson for all of us that, this idea that like great Americans are people who lived in the past, and they're the Martin Luther Kings, and they're in the black and white pictures, and they're the freedom riders. And those are great Americans, absolutely. But great Americans still live. Right? And they live each day going to work at a small business. They live each day teaching in a preschool classroom. They live each day as a nurse in the ER. The idea that you need some kind of special it factor when it comes to wealth, fame, beauty, familial status, connections, to be somebody important and to make an incredible contribution is, yes, there are examples of that in history, of course, but there are tens of thousands of more of examples of people who were not born into status, were not born into money or fame or wealth, who we can now look back at and be like, dang, I love everything that how they just kept putting one foot in front of the other. They just kept building the plane while they were flying it, or in some cases, the train while they were riding it. These people lived a long time ago, by and large. They just kept doing the next needed thing. And I think we get so bogged down in our own analysis paralysis. We get so bogged down in the enormity of our own problems, of the world's problems, that we look around and we see everything that needs to be changed. The world hunger, and the children without parents, and the fentanyl crisis, and international conflicts. And, we see the enormity of all of these the world's problems, and we feel like nothing I can do will fix all of those things. And so we just feel sort of paralyzed to even have an impact. But one of the things that I learned while researching this book, and I've learned this personally as well, is that it is okay. In fact, it is even a good idea for you to make an impact in your one sphere of influence. The weight of the world is actually not on your shoulders. Nobody is saying, guess what? Jenna hasn't solved the AIDS crisis in sub-Saharan Africa, so she's done nothing with her life. That's not how that works. Right. Nobody's saying Sharon has not fixed the trade deficit with China, so consequently, she's done nothing with her life. Some things are your job. Some things are your skills and gifting, and some things are for other people to do. And that is not just okay. That is actually how it is supposed to work. That's how it's supposed to work. Jenna and I have larger platforms than maybe somebody who's listening to this does. And that's actually how that's supposed to work. There are actual, there's a lot of unique pressures and problems that come with having a large platform. There's a lot of great things about it too. But if you are somebody who is like, my life seems small in comparison to people who have 1 million followers. My education seems inadequate compared to people who have PhDs. My vision seems too confined compared to the great thinkers of the world. I think it's important that we all remind ourselves that change happens in the world. Positive change comes about from ordinary people who just kept moving their feet. They stopped moving their mouths and they started moving their hands and feet in a direction that maybe they pivoted from that direction down the road, but they did not just stand still and they were not consumed by the enormity of the world's problems. They just kept doing the next needed thing. And so I hope that somebody who reads this book or listens to this podcast feels encouraged that actually is what you're supposed to do. That's how it's supposed to work. All of us are supposed to contribute, not just 5 of us. Yep. Not just people with 1 million followers, not just the president, a single person or 5 people or 25 people. Those are people who are easy to discredit. It's easy to be like, I hate that politician. They're the worst. And even if they're doing incredible things, it's easy to look at them and be like, I hate them. People didn't like Martin Luther King when he was alive.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And so it's easy to discredit a single individual, but we cannot hold back the work of multitudes. And so I want to give you permission, whoever is listening to this, I want to give you permission to know that who you are, where you are, with the resources available to you is where you are supposed to make an impact in business or in life. And That is your unique gifting. And it's not that you can lean into it, it's that you should.
Are you ready to take your B2B marketing to the next level? Because if you're not using LinkedIn ads, you're missing out on huge opportunities. Other platforms are great for pretty pictures and fun videos, but when you want to reach the big decision makers, the people who can actually make things happen, LinkedIn is where you need to be. We're talking 180 million senior level execs and 10 million C-level leaders that you can build valuable relationships with. With LinkedIn ads, you get smart targeting and tracking tools so you can focus on getting results where it counts. LinkedIn generates 2 to 5 times higher return on ad spend than other social platforms. That's why 79% of B2B marketers say LinkedIn is their go-to for paid media. When you use LinkedIn, you're working with a partner who gets what B2B is all about. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get $100 credit on your next campaign. Head to linkedin.com/goal to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/goal. Terms and conditions apply. It reminds me when you say all this, because it's so powerful. And I think a lot of times people tell themselves like, once I have the following, I will say these important things. Or if I were you and I had the following, here's what I'd be talking about. And my encouragement is I would start talking about it now. That's how you build the following, right? And so it's interesting because it's like a lot of people won't even hold the mic up and say the things they want to say and build from the ground up. And it's like, think today of like, oh, if only Taylor Swift would talk about X, or if only Beyonce would talk about this thing that matters to you. Hold the microphone up to your own voice today and start sharing, because the people will come. And I think you are the perfect example of this, of just sharing. And oh my gosh, the people have come in droves. One thing I want to hit with you, because I just think that this is so powerful, is the way that you've tied mission into your work and the insane work that your community has come together to do to help alleviate debts for people. Can we just talk about that really quick? Because I know it's a complex thing, but a lot of people listening to this are very mission driven and often have a hard time connecting what they're doing to the things that truly matter the most. And you've done this in a really beautiful way.
Thank you. Yeah, the governors, which are what people in my community call themselves, we have raised over $10.2 million to give away for a variety of causes, ranging from medical debt forgiveness to disaster relief to teacher grants, and all sorts of causes in between. But one of the things that has helped me build community is, in addition to just being, sharing authentically what I know about being myself, it has also been giving other people the opportunity to be their best selves.
Yes.
People like to feel like they are making a difference. And as much as the world seems dark and the internet seems full of chads, as much as that is true, I do think overwhelmingly people inherently want to contribute. They want to make a positive difference in their communities. And often it's difficult to know how to do that. And so this idea that like, if you just go first, if you just light your candle, and then in turn, you can turn and light the candles of the people near you. And from there, light can spread. But if all you ever do is talk about the candle, and all you ever do is tell people that they should light theirs, that's not the same thing, right? That doesn't have the same effect as just actually doing something. So I have found that people respond when I talk genuinely and authentically about a cause that is near and dear to my heart, whether that is, like I said, forgiving medical debt or helping teachers pay for their classroom needs, whatever cause it is that I'm like. Right now, we're in the midst of talking about Hurricane Helene and the absolute devastation that has happened in Florida and North Carolina and Georgia and places like that. And we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in a couple of days for these kinds of disaster relief organizations that I partner with. But people tell me overwhelmingly how being given the opportunity to help someone else makes them feel and is an important component of their identity in this sort of governed community, their ability, the opportunity to impact others, that it's not just a fandom. Yep. Right? That it is a membership into a group who cares about similar things. So I think about when, somebody is working to build their own community, I think whatever that is for you, I have my own things that I care about. You have your own things that you care about. And that's good. That's good. We can't all care about the same things. I think giving people the opportunity to engage more deeply in your community by having an identity, a community identity that is tied to something that is related to your mission, whatever that is. And again, for me, I'm not saying emulate what I'm doing. I'm saying for me, mine is these things. I'm a former teacher. Of course, education is very important to me. And for somebody else, it might be animals. It could be environmental conservation. It could be whatever it is. People will engage more deeply in your community and be left feeling emotionally more satisfied from their interactions with you if they have an opportunity to give back in ways that's different than just being a purely transactional relationship.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so, you do such a beautiful job. And I totally agree. And I think this is that tipping point of just like speaking at people and talking with people is people want to be the smartest person in the room. People want to be asked a question. People want to contribute. And so it's like every opportunity that you offer that gives someone the opportunity to step in. And I think that is something that a lot of people miss when growing a true community is like giving them the spotlight in a way of like, here is your chance. And like, you don't have to say yes to everything, but when people step into it so willingly and get that joy in it, it's like, it is so contagious. And I think that is where the real ripple effects are made. So I love watching it and I'm so moved by it. And I think it's just such a beautiful way to involve your community. And it's crazy what you guys do. It's so freaking cool.
Thank you. Yes. They like to say they've made little, custom emojis on Instagram. Governors do not play.
That's right.
Like if you give us a task, we are going to rise to it. Yes. And that's part of their community identity. They now feel, and this is a legitimate thing too. This is not like, it's not a facade. They legitimately feel like my $5 is helping somebody where they can see the direct effect. And that emotional satisfaction is an important, giving changes the giver. Right? It doesn't just benefit the recipient. Giving changes the giver, and being able to provide people with those opportunities and to be a transparent steward of this, movement is a very important component of what I do.
Okay. My final question for you is, what is your favorite chapter of your book?
I think one of my most favorites is about a woman named Septima Clark. And she's at the sort of towards the end of the book. She's has a set of life circumstances that nobody else would want to trade places with. And I'll let you read the book and figure out what those are. But you will read her life circumstances and be like, well, Sharon was right. I would not trade places with that. Yeah. And she becomes a teacher herself. And she's, falsely accused of things and is arrested and, has all sorts of terrible things that happen to her. And at the end of her life, somebody asks her, essentially, what have you learned? And one of the things that she says, I just think is so important, something that we would really do well, just as a culture, as a community, as a country, I should say, we would do well to sort of take with us and tuck into our pockets during this, fractious election cycle, which is that I have learned that I can work with my enemies because they might have a change of heart at any moment. And I just think first of all, this woman has had some enemies. People have actively tried to kill her. Her enemies are not just like, a competitor or like a business who's ripped off my idea or, her enemies were real. Like they were trying to kill her. Right. So the idea that as a country that we can work with our enemies, whether they're political enemies or whatever those enemies might be, because they might have a change of heart at any moment. It really speaks to this idea that the way that we change people for the good is by remaining in a relationship with them. People are influenced by people with whom they have a warm relationship, whether that is, a parasocial relationship online or your individual family members, whatever that is. They're changed for the better by a warm relationship. They are not changed by shame. They are not changed by being denigrated. They're not changed by being made fun of. As much as we would like to think that shaming somebody into behaving a certain way creates lasting change, it does not. Yeah. In the same way that, hitting a person might teach them not to do that thing again, but what it really does is make them afraid of you, right? It doesn't actually change what their impulses are. If we want the world to change for the better, and we all do, we all can think of ways we want the world to change for the better, then we must remain in community with each other. And if we want to have hope of influencing people for the good, we have to maintain that warm relationship. And listen, if Sept McClure can do it, so can we.
Oh, Sharon, where can everybody find out more about you, follow along on this crazy journey, and get their hands on your book?
Thank you so much. All the things are linked on my website, which is just SharonMcMahon.com, but you can also follow me on Instagram at Sharon Says So. I have a daily newsletter called The Preamble. That's at thepreamble.com. And you can buy my book any old place, including our favorite Minnesota company, Target. Target Boutique. That's how you have to say it. If you're from northern Minnesota, you see the sign, you see the bullseye coming up the road, and you're like, we have arrived at Target Boutique. That is what you have to say. Mm-hmm.
Did you hear that news story about that young girl who drove her parents' car to a Target? Did you hear this?
And she's like 8 years old or something like that. Yes.
And she somehow got in the car, drove to Target, and they found her walking around with a cart full of hundreds of dollars of things. I was like, we are all that girl deeply inside.
You don't go to Target for the things that you need. You go to Target to let Target tell you what you need. That's how that works.
Thank you so much for coming on the Goal Digger podcast, Sharon. This is amazing.
Truly a pleasure. Thanks, Jenna.
Sometimes when I wrap up an interview, I just have to pause and reflect because I have literally watched Sharon for the last decade. We shared an industry and we share a hometown. And watching as she just continues to pivot and reinvent and change the world every step of the way, it is absolutely so incredibly inspiring to me. And I hope today's conversation was inspiring to you. Go out and grab a copy of Sharon's book, The Small and the Mighty. It is so powerful and it'll remind you that no one is too small to make an impact. And thank you so much for listening to the Goal Digger podcast. If you're new here, take a minute to subscribe, leave a review and a rating. I would love to hear from you. This show is such an effort that gives me so much life. And I just love that these conversations get to reach your earbuds. And of course, until next time, Goal Diggers, keep on digging your biggest goals and know that you are never too insignificant to make a massive difference. Thanks for pulling up a seat for another episode of the Goal Digger podcast. I hope today's episode fueled you with inspiration, gave you information that you can turn into action, and realigned you with your true north in life and business. If you've enjoyed today's episode, head on over to goaldiggerpodcast.com for today's show notes, discount codes for our sponsors, freebies to fuel your results, and so much more. And if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed so that you never miss a future show. We'll see you next time, Goal Diggers.